Hi,
Hi,
I'm Nick.
I'm Jill,
And
we're
HipStrings.
HipStrings.
And you're actually here on time.
I am.
I was really worried. Jill just had to go pick up our eldest from a field trip thing and literally walked in 3 minutes before the live stream. So, yeah, I don't have to do this alone.
You're welcome.
So, welcome to day 2 of the 2022 HipStrings podcast. I realize there's another 2.
Which day?
There's 2 of us.
You're so very clever.
Yeah, well, I want to make sure we're on the right one. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, we are on the right one. Good. Okay.
People will eventually figure it out and they'll catch up with
People
us.
will eventually figure out. Well, hopefully they will have hit that bell for the notifications after subscribing.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? The other thing I forgot to say was
subscribe.
no, you smash the like button.
Oh, smash
That's
the like button.
Yeah.
Do not know these things.
I don't know. Anyways, we'll get better by the end of this. We got 12 days.
Yeah.
11 more, including this one. Anyway, so you're
Day
going to do
2.
day 2. So while you talk about that, I'm going to roll my die.
And lose it?
No, it just got the same thing as yesterday. I think this is a weighted die. Okay.
So, day 2 is hand-dyed gray merino silk. It's Tussa silk in this blend. It's the bright bits. This is bleu vert pâle on gray merino silk. Are we having issues?
I decided to clean up my mess from yesterday.
So that you can make it all
so I could
over
make
again?
it again, yes. And then you saw there was a little pause because I was trying to do my conversion from decimal to base 12.
So it's one of the later ones.
Yes.
Oh shoot, I forgot to leave my wheel today.
After all the talk of yesterday.
Well, I was going to grab it on the way down here because it's upstairs.
Okay.
No.
Do you want me to message Gab and see if they can?
No.
Okay. Well,
That has to change.
that you had all this stuff by your feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. What you can't see is that in order to prep and make sure Jill had all the right fiber,
all of my baggies are on the ground.
I dumped all of Jill's bags on the floor too. So, yeah, there's a bit of a mess by your feet. So yeah, did I cover up all of your review of what you guys are spinning today?
No, it's
just
very plain. It's hand dyed.
Hand dyed, okay.
And it's 70-30 gray merino and Tussa silk.
You're gonna beat me quite a bit because this one is not behaving for me.
Your tension's not right.
No, there we go.
So you need to flip it.
Oh, I might need to flip it.
Sometimes cone top is directional and you need to flip it.
So why don't you talk about that? Because it's
sometimes cone top is directional and you need to flip it.
Is there anything more you'd like to say about that? Like, why is it directional?
Because it goes through the machines in a certain direction, and spinning it so that you're smoothing it down instead of riling it up goes smoother.
Okay. And how we can figure that out is we can take our fiber, we can run our hand along it, and if it pets it and
it smooths down, then you're okay.
And if I go the other way, where it's like getting all fuzzy and stuff, then it's wrong. So I'm on the right side.
Okay.
I just had a little bit of a, I don't know what.
Issue?
I had a little bit of an issue, yeah.
The wheel's behaving better today, so it might just be I needed some stuff on the core, and that would even out tension issues.
Okay. Well, since we said today was going to be all technical, before we get into talking about the yes, Amy is now yelling at you. How could you forget your lube? Before we go and talk about all the different control cards, I do want to wish everybody a happy Fusion Day.
What's Fusion Day?
The fact that they announced today that they had the first, the Lawrence Livermore National Lab demonstrated the first fusion controlled event that generated more energy than they put into it.
Wow.
Yeah, like this is a huge deal scientifically. There's an excellent article in the New York Times about it. and some great video.
I guess I have some reading to do.
It doesn't mean we're going to get free energy anytime soon, because there's still like scaling up and how do you make it continuous.
Baby. Does it, like, did it shut off?
Yeah, I mean, they don't have a sun suddenly going off in California.
Okay,
but
that's good to know.
It is a controlled event, but this is the first step that hasn't ever been achieved by anybody on any human before.
Yay!
So this is if you're into science a little bit and you haven't heard
Yay,
about this
government-supported research.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, there's again the New York Times article will go into it a bit, but this is one of those things where the U.S. government spent billions of dollars on creating this thing, this lab. What, like, I think it was like 10, 20 years ago, and just now they're starting to actually have a positive result. I mean, they had incremental results beforehand, but this was the first like big deal result. So, yeah, there's something super technical for you.
Okay, talking about technical. You grabbed control cards now. Where did you put them?
I did. I have them behind me with an arm's reach. So, I will hand you the two most basic of control cards that you can start talking about, since you were ahead of me already.
So, this is our keychain, wraps per inch. It is a 2-inch slot for wrapping, and then it has cheater lines for yarn weight. So this is more for applied yarn, but we can do a plyback sample. To do a proper plyback sample, you actually have to pull single off the bobbin, because the amount of twist in the yarn changes between what's in front of the orifice and what's behind the orifice. So, and your amount of twist in your single will affect your yarn weight, because it'll affect how dense your yarn is. So I do a plyback sample, you know, just let it naturally.
Maybe 10 inches longish.
It doesn't have to be this long, but it shows me my 2-ply. Well, this is a fat bit. Like, it is not even. I'm going to go a little bit farther from there, because I think that's a little bit lighter on the twist than what most of the rest of the plyback sample is. So I'm going closer to that.
So you're holding up it up against one of your cheater lines.
Yeah. And so this says it's around sport, but this isn't washed or anything, and I expect almost always, especially with a wool, it's going to fatten up when it gets access to warmth and heat and water.
It'll full, I think is the term, right?
No, fulling is the scale is actually interlocking.
Okay.
So I would expect when this is done to be about a DK, which is useful and not going to take forever to use like last year's.
So I think that one of the important things about this is that we're using the cheater lines because we're doing a plyback sample. That's only really applicable if you're going to be doing a 2-ply. If you're doing a 3-ply, it's going to change. So there's all sorts of interesting equations to that. But in the case of what a wraps per inch tool really usually is you're wrapping it that many times, or you're wrapping it and counting how many wraps there are in an inch. Now we have, for this, as Jill mentioned, a 2-inch gap here. So you'd wrap it to fill the 2-inch gap, but it's really kind of not possible to do a plyback sample to do that, which is why the cheater lines are useful. So, but this is, as Jill mentioned, the cheater lines are only really good for if you have a ply or something on that one. So then there is the precise control card.
This has lines, cheater lines that go for most of the range that most spinners are going to spin in. We do have a macro which has for fatter yarns, so I think it goes from like 18 to 2. And then we also have a micro that goes from, oh gosh, I think it goes from 8, it starts off the other side, because the two macro and micro will really give you a full range. It's like 18 to like 80.
And so, again, those are reps per inch that you could use on the single to figure out how many reps.
Yeah.
So, again, rather than wrapping it 80 times or 25
I
times
can't
or
count
something,
to 20 on a regular basis.
you would just use one of these cheetah lines. You'd hold up the single to
So I'm doing it. You want it not to have tension on it. You want to have just enough tension so it lays flat. But if you actually stretch, you will get a thinner single.
Yeah.
But that's not what it's going to do when it's yarn, because when it's in yarn, it's in a relaxed state.
So,
So this is, I'm spinning at about, I would say 28 reps per inch.
and this is really useful to help keep track of how your single is going. I'm going to go check mine now. It's really good to keep track of how your single is going so that when you're changing types of fiber from one day to the next, or you're changing...
Whenever you change the mechanics of your wheel by lubing it.
Or as your bobbin
Or
gets
changing
full,
your
or
tension.
you change a bobbin, right?
Yeah.
Any of those things, you're going to want to make sure that you adjust your feet treadling, your wheel ratio, your tension, any of that stuff to make sure that you get a consistent yarn, if that's what you're going
Yeah,
for,
because
right?
also like flyer lead wheels, also known as Scotch tension, the mechanics of the wheels change a lot in terms of how effective they are in putting twist into your yarn as the bobbin fills.
So today I'm going like a 32, which is not what I was doing yesterday. So I am going to try and go a little bit thicker. And then, because I was tricking you and making you talk while I was spinning, I will...
And then decided to go fatter.
And then decided to go fatter. I will be fair and bring out what we had teased before. So this is the world's first viewing of...
No, it's not the world's first.
Well,
I've handed
public.
prototypes.
Yeah, but public.
Okay.
When you see a prototype car driving around with all the weird, like, extra patterns on it, you don't call it revealed.
This
until
is
they
why
actually show
I'm
it
not
off.
in marketing.
Okay, so world reveal of the Nano. So I will
If it was really a
bring it a little bit closer.
proper reveal, I'd already have it on the website.
That's true. So we'll get some good pictures of this, but this is for those of you that can spin
Frog hair.
Frog hair, yeah. Our thickest gauge on here is 15 wraps per inch. And our thinnest is 200 wraps per inch. You're not going to run a wrap 200 times and count all of that. So the way we have it set up is you are to wrap, either on this side you wrap 20 times, on this side you wrap 10 times, but you have it pushed up against one of the edges, and then if you wrap 20 times and you cover up any of these sections, that tells you about how many wraps per inch you go. So you can't tell the difference between, or rather, there's no numbers between 75 and 100, so you're not going to get single wraps per inch resolution at that point.
We're working with the error of measurement.
Yeah, yeah. So, but I think that at least we think, and everybody we've spoken to so far thinks that's good.
This
so
is a bragging rights control card.
So, unfortunately...
Maybe I'll just name it that. Bragging rights.
Bragging rights?
Yeah.
BR. If you... I completely forgot what I was going to say. But if you spin frog hair and you're interested in this, keep an eye on the website for the next couple of days. This should come up relatively soon. But we're ready to go with...
At least clear.
With at least clear and all our typical colors.
Yeah.
And I will say, going back to the previous comment, Amy had noted we'll have Mr. Fusion devices in our cars before we know it.
Yeah.
Let's hope. I like it. So, something that we can indeed talk about without having to hold up samples is the fact that when you are doing your reps per inch, you demonstrated that, what were you on 28?
Yeah.
Your 28 reps per inch plied back gave you a sport weight.
Yeah.
But that's not always necessarily the case because of your angle of twist and also if you're going 3-ply, right?
Right.
So, can you talk a little bit about the
Oh gosh.
multipliers or
I
at
hate them.
least give people reference on where they might find that information?
So, I do understand it. You're actually dividing. So there's a standard guideline that if you take the reps per inch of your single and divide it by 1.5, that will give you an estimated, now I'm spinning super thin.
Would you like the card?
That will give you an estimate of what your reps per inch of your 2-ply is. For a 3-ply, you would divide by 2. But it's just a guideline, and it depends on what your angle of twist is, and a whole bunch of other stuff.
And that's because of how the singles nestle into each other in the twist, right?
So you can do kind of, you can do measurements, but it's only really a guideline, and I've found it's only really accurate if you have experience with that fiber and you know that a single is of this size. When you 2-ply it or 3-ply it, you get a yarn of a certain weight and not necessarily even a certain reps per inch, because yarn weights are ranges. They are not just one set reps per inch.
Oh yeah.
And that's how you can have like a light fingering and a heavy fingering, and yarn weight is a spectrum.
That's like, I think we need a shirt that says that.
Yeah, we should.
So many shirts. We said something about it. We needed to make a pin yesterday, and I can't remember what that was about.
Oh, it was something about lube.
Yes. I mean, okay. No Flies says, are you spinning your singles S or Z? The camera may be reversing it or not.
I'm spinning... Z. I'm spinning clockwise. I really dislike Z versus S as terminology.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Yeah, I'm spinning Z. So you're spinning Z too, because you're also spinning clockwise. Yeah.
I'm spinning Z. I have to remember like the direction of the lines and the letters, in order to know if it's clockwise or counterclockwise. So yes, singles are Z. Plyback sample will be S.
So that only matters for your own personal preference, though, right? There's nothing about
there are certain fibers that are better spun one way versus another because of natural twist
and twist in the fiber.
Yeah, so like flax is better spun S for the singles because the fibers themselves have a I think they have I forget what they have, but they have an opposite directional twist than wool, which is part of the like wives' tales about why you don't mix wool and flax.
Wait,
because they should be spun in different directions.
Okay. But wait, so wool, does that matter on which direction you spin it?
Wool traditionally has almost always been spun S.
No, we're spinning Z.
Z. There are some for like weaving purposes that I forget. Like you would spin the warp one direction and the weft another direction.
Yeah.
To create, I think it creates a more open weave because the warp and the weft don't interlock as well.
I mean, but that in and of itself says that there's not a physical requirement as to why wool needs to be spun one direction or the other.
Yeah, it's just...
It's tradition.
It's tradition.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who will spin it S and then ply Z for like crochet, because crochet and also continental knitters knitting from the inside of their cake tend to unply their yarns. And that's because the twist that you add in the hand movement is opposite of the ply twist for a traditionally S-plied yarn. But if it's Z-plied, then the twist you're adding is, keeping your yarn together.
Gotcha. So does that mean for the flax blends, should we be thinking about spinning them S?
There are so little flax in there, it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
It's not the predominant fiber.
So it's not going to impact.
But it impacts keeping that top open. Because the flax is always going to be at an opposing crimp to the wool. And that's one thing I've always said about my wool flax blends is that they have a certain lightness and loft to them, and that's because air is getting trapped in them.
So you would actually make it more dense if you spun it S?
Possibly.
Sounds like an experiment we need to do.
Somebody else can do that experiment. I apparently have to try out all the loops.
Okay, I think I have an experiment to do then. So you may have noticed that when we were trying to figure out the answer to whether or not we're spinning S or Z, that I pulled out another tool, which is our angle of twist gauge. And we have, this is the newer version of it.
It's the only one I sell. Well, okay, there are leftovers of the original one. I don't sell the original. I haven't made any new ones because it has 10-degree angle of twist. After using it for a while, I realized there's actually a short window of angles that is actually relevant for spinners, and the difference between 5 degrees versus 10 degrees is big.
So you've got 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, and 45.
Yeah, that's the relevant range of angles for most creators of yarn and users of yarn.
Although I was just thinking about an update that we could have to that to have the vertical lines. So you make sure that you have it in perpendicular to where
You'll
you
have to
actually
do
wanna
like
measure.
some like very 80s neo-futuristic
I've got it.
grid.
Yeah, exactly. 80s neo-futuristic grid. I like it. We'll have a third version coming out. I mean, when have I ever turned down anything 80s neo-futuristic?
Never.
The old 80s Super Mario Brothers movie is one of my favorite movies because of that.
Is Chris Pratt about to ruin your childhood?
No, it'll be a different Super Mario Brothers movie. I really hope they'll have some reference in there to it, although I highly doubt it. Nintendo likes to have fun, but they don't like to recognize their previous failures. So, okay. So, I was totally not paying attention to the color that you had yesterday.
Yeah. It was light blue, like sky blue.
Like a
with
lighter blue than what you
periwinkle.
got there?
Yes.
Okay.
This is more aqua. That was more cornflower periwinkle, sky blue.
Okay. And that shows you my...
We have an expanded color vocabulary in this family.
I was going to say, that shows you the level of my color sophistication. I'm like, oh, it's blue or lighter blue?
Yeah. It warms my heart that our boys are like, my favorite color is now cyan.
Very specific.
You have a particular shade of blue.
All right, so I have split into thirds, but I am on my second third.
Oh no.
Yeah.
You've been tricking me into talking.
Well, I tried to, you know what, I'll take a drink and make sure that it slows down a little bit because of that. You're supposed to be going faster because of your woolly winder.
Yeah, well, the woolly winder is causing off things with my tension because I haven't lubricated
Because you
it
didn't get the
properly.
lube.
And so I'm having to be very cautious because if I have the tension down where I like it,
Yeah.
it's not pulling in all the time, and I'm getting like pigtails. So I have to have the tension a little higher than I'd like, and that means I have to exercise a little bit more control to get a consistent single.
But you're doing a good job, and you were spinning much thinner than I am, so.
I had a friend like send me a video of them spinning and be like, "Can you like give me a critique?" And I was like, "Okay." And I like went through this whole technical critique. I'm like, "Here, this is what I see you struggling with. I think this is the reason why." I was like, I don't know how to explain this, and I'm like, so I spin a little bit differently.
Well, is this where you discovered the new terminology that you were talking
Yeah.
about?
So I also realized because I sent her, I had a Facebook post that was just like how I spin long draw.
Mm-hmm.
So I sent her that video, and like she was like, "Okay, I understand that, but how does that translate to how you spin worsted?" And I said, "Okay, well, the only big difference is my hands are closer together when I spin worsted versus long draw. They're like this, like comfortable shoulders distance apart.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of having my fiber in line with my single, what I do is my thumb and pointer are the gatekeeper for the twist. They pinch and they just open and shut. They don't move. My ring finger moves in and out, and that's what's drafting. And so for a worsted, what I do is I'll have the fiber a little bit perpendicular, not necessarily 90 degrees, but it will be at an angle because twist doesn't like to go around corners if there's a lot of tension. And so then when I draft, I'm pulling that single to draft, but that is also adding tension to the single, which means that the twist won't go too far past that point and into my fiber supply.
Yeah.
Because if you're spinning worsted, you do not want twist in your fiber supply. That's how you get like big nasty slubs and you're fighting your fiber.
I realize I switch it up depending on how my hands get tired. So like right now, I'm not doing anything with the gatekeeper around the corner or anything like that.
Yeah, you're doing a standard short forward draw that how most people spin.
But then like every now and then I'll switch up into something like this, where I'm controlling with my ring finger how the fiber goes or how the twist goes into the fiber.
And so from what I read so JC from Ply Magazine did a quick little post about this and described it as being called spinning around the post. And apparently it was described by Margaret Stove, who is known for very fine spinning. And she uses it because it allows you greater control on your tension, which is what you need for spinning fine yarns. So I totally invented it because I am also a person who I started spinning by spinning cotton, which needs very low tension and high speed, and it will teach you control whether or not you want to learn control.
Now, what do you mean by low tension?
That the
wheel is pulling low tension?
Yeah,
okay.
So like I really don't want it pulling. I feel like it's sucking me in right now. I want it to feel like it's barely trying to grab the single away from me.
Yeah.
Because then I have more time to respond to how the twist is traveling. Because if that twist travels too fast, it's going to get in my fiber supply. And then I don't have as much control over how much fiber that twist is going to get into, and that's what controls the diameter of your yarn.
There we go.
So if I wanted to spin thicker, I would open up a lot more and let that twist travel a little bit further down into my drafting triangle. But because I spin this way, I have a hard time spinning fat. I've had to retrain my hands on how to spin fat.
Well, I mean, we say that all the time, right? That to new beginner spinners, you know, enjoy the fat singles you make, because it's going to be hard to do that when you're trying to do it later on.
Right, and it's actually can be really hard to be able to enunciate exactly what you have to do differently with your hands. Because this is a muscle memory thing. Like,
Yeah.
your brain does not exactly know what's going on here unless it sits and thinks about it for a long time.
Well, that's exactly.
And that's what spinning teachers do.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly why I was saying yesterday I have my natural spinning thickness and not even paying attention to exactly what I'm doing. I mean, you can help control that.
You got a control card? I want to
do.
see if I'm still spinning on about the same.
There you go.
Okay, good. I am. I just can't change my hand setup. My hands are not happy. This is not how I usually spin. I usually spin with my right hand forward and fiber in my left.
Well, you were bragging yesterday about
Yes.
how you're ambidextrous, so.
But I can spin this way. I just don't like it.
Well, don't worry. Soon I'm going to be able to get your lube.
Yes.
All right, everybody's super quiet today.
Yeah,
I'm getting
everybody
worried.
is.
Getting way too technical. We've either put people to sleep or they're just at the edge of their seat writing notes. Maybe a little bit of both.
And this is why you should take a class with me. I can be highly entertaining and super technical at the same time. Well, maybe not at the same exact time, but I alternate between the two.
So, you mentioned that Gab had come back from a field trip. Did Gab give a report as to whether or not the food was any good?
It was They had bratwurst and bread and butter. They did not like the potato pancakes, so they were not impressed. So our German food is better.
Oh, good.
And they had a friend got scammed
Oh, no.
to buy roses, so they came home with a rose.
Okay.
It was I've heard of this before. Guy comes, shoves like 3 roses in the guy's hand, and then like asks for money.
Yeah. That's annoying. I hate that stuff.
So, friend had to paid like $20 for 3 roses.
Oh my God.
Yeah, inflation, dude.
No, that's the point where you just throw the roses back in the
Yeah,
guy's
but they're
face.
high school kids.
Yeah, I know.
They're still finding their way in the world.
There was, I remember when I was growing up, just outside of DC, there was a time I went into DC, and I saw there was this guy, and he was going around and finding people to scam like that, and he would tap on your shoulder and say, as you turn around, you weren't smiling, he would say,
Oh yeah.
"Hey, this is a no frowning zone."
Yeah.
You know, and he'd hand you a sticker and then charge you $5 for the sticker.
Yeah,
and,
I remember
et cetera.
getting targeted for that in DC.
So I saw this guy and I knew what he was doing. So when I got tapped in the shoulder, I turned around and had a big old smile on my face. And you could tell he was taken aback a bit. And he said, "This is a no smiling zone. Buy my sticker that says smile." And I'm like, "No." Go away. So, oh, good. We harassed people enough so that they would actually write to this. Amy said that she's busy spinning and have to stop to type. Also saying potato pancakes are awesome. Yes, potato pancakes are awesome. There's a particular restaurant in Pittsburgh that is famous for its German food, and we were not impressed the one time we went there.
Yeah.
And
but Erwig's in State College.
well, that's not German. That's Austrian.
I know, but still,
But
it set a high bar for that
that's
type
a
of
high
food.
bar. So Gab had a German class field trip to that restaurant, and again, apparently they were still not impressed. Yes, I love potato pancakes. Now I'm getting hungry. Dan says it's getting late for me. I'm trying to pay attention and learn. Yes. Yes. This is one of those things where, like, you when you are sleepy and you learn things, you retain it, right? No?
No.
I don't know.
I don't remember anything I learned in a class before 9 a.m.
Well, we are glad that you are with us, and we're exercising your brain. Okay, so speaking of exercising your brain,
I'm already on my smallest ratio.
What? Are you? What?
Yeah, I am. I was like,
Oh wow.
gotta go fast.
Yep. Especially because you're spinning so much thinner than me. I should check what my gauge is now if I'm consistent. What did I say it was before? 36-ish? Yeah. I'm still there. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. So, okay, German food in Pittsburgh, as far as I can tell, there's not great options. There are ones that we haven't tried out, and we've heard that there's good Hungarian food.
Oh yeah?
In Pittsburgh.
I'll be the judge of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I gave them a recommendation for German food in Rhinebeck that another friend had given me.
Yeah?
Yeah. Lenora had recommended a German restaurant.
Yeah, you didn't read Diane's comment. It was specifically, I love German food too. No good recommendations here. I think you hooked us up for Rhinebeck.
Yeah.
And Amy said, yes, the disappointing local German food led to awesome Hudson Valley German food.
Nick and I make a very good pork schnitzel. Like,
also known as pork katsu if you're in Japan.
yeah.
Which is super weird. My kids love, pounded pork flat and bread it and fry it. And the fact that it is a common German food known as schnitzel and a common Japanese food known as katsu is just super weird to me. It's like exactly the same thing. Just sometimes you'll get the Japanese one with like a slightly sweet sauce.
Yeah.
But also in both varieties, there's one that has fried egg on it.
Okay. Good local German food up in Harmony, the Harmony Inn.
Oh yes, we heard about that.
And I've been there.
You've been there? I haven't.
And their German food is good.
I mean, that's not very local though. That's like a 45-minute drive away.
It's worth it for better German food.
Yes. I'm not saying it's not worth it. I'm just not saying it's pushing the definition of what local is, because
yes.
If you want to go to State College, that's a 2-hour drive away, not too much longer.
I mean, there were times when I seriously considered a 2-hour drive to go to Erwig's.
Which you said no longer exists.
Which no longer exists.
Yeah. Now I'm depressed. Erwig's was good.
It was.
It was also a really fun environment. So, by the way, I just finished.
What? I haven't even started my second half.
Is that my fault? I mean, you are spinning like half as thick as me, right? Or am I just? Is it just looking like so because it's darker?
What's your like twist like?
What do you mean? What's my twist like?
Do a flyback sample. I want to know your angle of twist.
Okay.
Because otherwise, you're like defying physics. Oh, okay. Yeah, you've got like no twist in that single.
Okay, you seem rather upset about this idea.
Well, I'm trying to figure out
nice
how
and
you spin
floofy.
approximately the same thickness as me in like half the time. And it's because your yarn has no twist.
Okay. Are you saying I'm going to need to go and add more twist to all of this yarn?
It means you might be disappointed when you ply because you're probably going to be overplied, or you're going to ply to match that type of twist, and it's going to be a very low angle of twist.
Wow, you are really, really upset about this. I always end up with very floofy yarns.
So maybe you need to let more twist in. Because, like, look at mine. Mine has, like...
Yours looks like a commercial yarn.
Yeah. Okay, now I know that you're not defying physics. That you are sacrificing twist for speed.
Well, that's the name of the game, right?
Yeah. Do you know how hard it is for me to do low twist yarns?
Well, now I don't know if I should just keep on doing my low twist yarns or if I should, like, improve myself over, because it's going to be weird if I start off one side with a low twist. What'll happen? Maybe I'll ask that as a question so it leads into an actual discussion. What happens if I have one ply that is a low twist and one ply that is a high twist?
You will tend to have something that is more like a spiral ply, where one yarn will go around the other single instead of the two of them interlocking. So it doesn't make as stable of a yarn. You'll get like some texture. It won't necessarily lay flat or be a smooth yarn.
That shit'll block out.
No, that shit does not
No?
block out. No.
Everything blocks out. Emily Witt says, I also have a hard time doing low twist. So I'm going to say this was a challenging spin. Because, okay, you are going to kill me with your glares. Yeah. You want to go get your lube?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you going to entertain the public?
I'll entertain people.
Okay. I apologize for the muffling of... There we go. That
Not so
loud
bad.
noise from my mic. I'll be back. Where is the lube anyway?
It should be on the table by my chair.
Okay.
It's a larger container.
I will search.
Yeah, when I do low twist, I have to bump up to a much larger pulley. I can't like do low twist at like a 15-to-1. I have to like go down to like a 5-to-1 or a 7-to-1 to do low twist. And this is why Jill does not spin singles. I did it once as a commission spin for ply. And probably never again. If I'm spinning singles, I spin them for weaving, which allows me to put a little bit more twist in. No. That will help.
It's a lube. It's not the right lube, apparently.
This is just motor oil, lightweight motor oil in a thing. It's not my preferred lube, but it'll do.
Well, we can try out different lubes on multiple days now. Yeah?
Yeah. So I'm lubing my
Woolly winder?
You know what? I should probably also lube the shaft because I should be smarter and remember that when my tension is not very regular, that it's usually too much friction between the bobbin and the flyer shaft. And taking off your flyer while you're currently spinning is not...
Do you need to, like, spin?
No, don't mess with this.
Okay. Do you need me to hold on to anything?
Nope. I got it. My tip is stuck. It's bent. No oil's coming out, Nick.
I don't know what to tell you. I don't know how to do this thing. Maybe this is going to end badly,
I have
isn't it?
a better... where'd that bottle I found the other day? I don't know where I found it.
This is
I have an empty oil bottle somewhere over there.
Okay. This is the least entertaining podcast ever.
No, I think it's highly entertaining.
Okay. Let's try that again. Okay. Where?
Oh no. I remember where I put it. I was like, I'm never going to need this thing. I'll put it in the bin of random things. Underneath the table. There towards the back. By no, not that far. The yarn winder in the back. Underneath the table. That table, yes. There's a black bin. Towards the back.
No, there really isn't.
There is.
Oh, okay. I see it.
Inside there?
Yep.
Yeah.
Ta-da.
Transfer the oil to that one that it has a better tip.
Okay.
See? I promise. Still entertaining. Don't get oil over everything.
Something. Yeah. I'm not going to transfer all of the oil.
No, don't do that. Just enough. And we'll hope that this bottle works. I mean, this is actual a shacked spinning wheel.
It's coming out?
Yeah, it's coming out. Okay, oil my shaft. And I just oil where the bobbin sits.
Yeah, you don't have to rub it all in
You don't have
shaft.
Yeah, you don't have to rub the entire shaft, just where the bobbin sits. Where the bearings of the bobbin sit.
Hey, apparently we're providing marriage therapy as well. Because Amy says we're helping her feel better about her marriage. I don't know how to take that comment. I'm going to say we are doing good things, and I will take that positively.
Yeah, we have a very open and honest relationship where we're not afraid to critique the other person. Ha! So let's see how this works now. Oh, so much nicer.
Better?
So much nicer. Yeah, all better now.
Amy says the advantage Nick has is that he does fiber things, so he knows what the fuck Jill is talking about. Yeah. Well, I will say we have a very educational podcast here, and your spouse can watch with us, or you can take it upon yourself to educate as well. One of my favorite things at a booth is to find the guys, and it's always guys. I hate to be sexist, but it's always guys that are just carrying.
No. I have run into a couple guys who have trailing spouse or
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Then I will genericize my
Yes.
statement, and
Gender neutral terms, please.
I love finding the spouse that is carrying all the stuff for the
Interested party.
interested party, yeah. and encouraging them to learn a little bit more about this hobby. And Amy says it would not end well for her to do that. Well, the most common response I get when I try and jovially encourage them is that they have some other hobby that is taking up too much time, money, space. But then the trick is to try and find a way to intertwine the fiber arts with that. Oh, I have a new. I showed you this picture, but it made me so excited, and I really need to figure out how I'm going to do it. Somebody, I have of my many hobbies that I collect. I like making models of giant robots, so like Gundam and Macross and all of those. And on one of the forums that I follow, somebody posted a picture of a Gundam mech robot wearing a sweater. And I totally want to knit sweaters for all my mechs now. So I've been trying to figure out all afternoon, what colors would Optimus Prime have for his sweater? Because I could also like do color work and put an Autobot symbol on the middle. It would be so cute. Yeah. So you're my color resource. What I mean, it's a little bit obvious to make it blue and red, right? Like he's got to have some good contrasting colors. Like I'm thinking white and something.
I could see Optimus in a beautiful cream and gray marled sweater.
Okay. Cool.
Maybe a Gansey.
Yeah. Now I got to figure out which of my Optimus Primes I want to knit a sweater for, because there's it's like one this big and there's one like that big, and then there's the Lego one that's like that big, which I haven't even built yet. Which is another hobby.
Oh, this wheel is so much happier now.
I am glad that we serviced your wheel.
Phrasing.
So, let that be a technical lesson.
Yeah.
Try, if you haven't, if yesterday's discussion about lube was not enough to get you to experiment, there's no way I could talk about this appropriately, is there? Please try to lube the appropriate locations on your wheel.
Lubricate.
Yes.
With a lightweight
Yeah.
motor oil or super lube or an appropriate lubrication for your materials.
We have not yet experimented with KY jelly either.
No.
Yeah.
But we were talking more about lube last night, and I was like, well, but there's special lubes for leather bearings and different things you want to use for metal on metal versus metal on wood or metal on synthetic. If you have a brass bearing or Delrin versus plastic, because some materials absorb oil and hold on to it. So like brass and Delrin will become oil impregnated if you feed it.
So that does lead to a problem from an experimentation standpoint.
Oh, I need fresh wheels, Nick.
We need to buy 20 different wheels
with fresh bearings.
With fresh bearings and use no. There's a better way to do that.
What's that?
Well, okay.
The better way is always buy more wheels.
I was going to say that the most significant part that you've been noting is the oiling the shaft.
Yes.
For the bobbin.
Yes.
So I could see fresh bobbins for all the experimentation.
Okay.
It's still expensive, but not as expensive as a fresh wheel for every bearing or for every lube.
Science, Nick, though. Science demands it.
Well, we get to support a friend in that case. Okay, but where? So we could say for your Saxony that has the Delrin bearings that we made,
Yeah.
we could get fresh leather bearings for that.
Yeah, I have my original leather bearings.
And compare different lubes.
And I know I've only used one type of.
Well, we need a different leather for every lube.
Yes.
How are we going to measure this?
I don't know. Break out the tachometer. How do you measure coefficient of friction?
Really, the better way is not to measure it on the bearing itself. No, I guess we do want to, because we want to get the rate speed and the heat generation and the duration.
Oh, do we need an IR camera?
No, we don't need that. I mean, I could borrow one from work, but no, I'm. You can see the smoke coming from my ears here in terms of how I'm thinking, because you want to have the drive be consistent, and pedaling is not necessarily consistent. Right? So how do we drive something at the same rate every time? And
so you need to make an e-spinner.
I need to make an e-spinner, and then I can measure the current flow on the motor to achieve the same speed. And that's how you measure the coefficient of friction. And we can monitor that over time.
And just use different flyer setups.
Yeah.
I also test out different types of bearings. Delrin is my favorite bearing material. Delrin is the same as Corian countertops. It's an extremely dense synthetic resin. But it likes to hold on to oil. So it has a very low coefficient of friction.
As long as the oil is in there. And
Yeah.
you got to be careful that it is an oil and not a water-based lube
Right.
at that point.
So that's some bearings you want to feed oil. I don't put super lube on those bearings. Or brass.
That's better for machine oil. Brass also machine oil?
Brass will absorb oil. So I tend to use motor oil on them. But I usually use super lube for flyer shafts. Because super lube can deal with synthetics without breaking them down or gumming up. At least the transparent super lube.
Yeah. And the motor oil will gum up over time.
Yeah, it can polymerize, especially at
Yeah.
high speeds. It's not very heat tolerant.
So that's only if your material is not going to absorb stuff.
Right.
If your material is going to absorb stuff, then you
I
need it
use
to be
oil.
an oil so that it'll absorb. And even then, if it polymerizes, it's polymerizing not on your surface, it's polymerizing in the bearing itself. But then if it's something that's sitting on top, like on a stainless steel shaft, you don't want it to polymerize on top because it can't go into there. You're just going to end up with some gunk.
Yeah, and I've gotten really gunky flyer shafts from oil polymerizing.
Do you have a recommended method of cleaning that stuff?
Limonene is my favorite solvent for
because that's
polymerized
strong
fats.
That's going to deal with the gunky, goopy polymerized fat. By the way, when we say polymerized, that's, I'm going to be drastically oversimplifying it. You tell me if I'm wrong. But basically...
You're more recently a chemist than I am.
I just play one on TV. Literally right now. Maybe I should say I play one on the internet.
Yeah.
You're taking oil. So plastics are made from oil. And it's because they go through a heat process and sometimes with what's called a cross-linking agent. So all the things that are, normal strands of proteins and stuff going around in a liquid suddenly lock up together because of either heat or these other components or both. And that's polymerization, right? I mean, drastic oversimplification, but So when you have that, you end up with goop, right? And so especially we're dealing with fiber, so that stuff gets stuck in there, and it's all nasty. Limonene is easy to get. It smells wonderfully of...
I mean, it's orange oil, basically.
Yeah, it smells wonderfully of orange because it is orange. And you can use that to clean stuff up. Definitely wear gloves.
Ventilate.
Yeah. It's not as bad as something like acetone or isopropyl, but it's still not something...
Or petroleum distillates.
See, now you're using the fancy words. But yeah, so you can use that. Limonene, definitely easy to clean stuff off, and it shouldn't damage finish on oil, finish on wood or anything like that, right?
No.
You know, if things
orange oil is very common in wood finishes.
If things get really nasty on metals, yeah, you can use something like acetone, but you want to make sure that it doesn't get anywhere near plastics.
Or like navel jelly, but you don't want that near your wood.
Yeah, you don't want to get any of that stuff near any wood. So if you can get limonene, get limonene. You can get it at the hardware store, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so it should be pretty easy. Okay, so we talked about cleaning, we talked about lubing.
Why you use different lubes on different parts.
One of the things that everybody forgets to do is tighten their wheels.
Yeah, I totally just went through that. So I adopted a Rose that hadn't been spun on in like a decade. And it was terribly creaky. And I went and I lubed it, and it was still terribly creaky. And so then I went and I tightened all the screws. And like the screws you don't even think are going to cause a problem. Wood is a natural material. It moves. It absorbs humidity and it releases water.
We're cold in North America right now, so
yeah.
It's going to shrink. Your wheels are going to get all the
screws might loosen
up.
Yeah, I had a ladybug that had a terrible knocking sound, and the flyer would not run smooth. And it was like, I tried everything, and then it turned out there's like a wedge at the back of the maiden, the mother of all, and I like gave it a good whack down, and it tightened it up, and it was silent after that. But like I took off the screws for the treadle hinges on this Rose, and like the hinges had corroded, so I like cleaned those up, oiled the hinges with a lightweight motor oil, and also some super lube. Put it all back together, and it was vastly improved. It still had some issues, but then I spun on it to work in all the lubricants, and it's running beautifully now.
Now, one thing I'll note is, since we're on the topic of lubes, one of the most common things that people think of when they want to loosen something up is WD-40.
Don't.
That is not a lube. It is...
It's a solvent, right?
I don't know exactly what it's classified as. That's what I was going to look up, because I remember something about it being something like a degreaser or a let me see.
Not a lubricant, though.
Yeah, it is not a lubricant. It
can help like get rid of corrosion, so like that's why people will spray it into like hinges, because hinges the metal can oxidize over time and have buildup, and the WD-40 helps break that down so that you don't have stuff getting in the way.
So the WD-40 website says it does call it a lubricant. It's not the type of lubricant you want for this. It says it protects metal from rust and corrosion, penetrates stuck parts, displaces moisture, and lubricates almost anything. But in this case, we wouldn't recommend
Don't
using
get it near your wheel. I've also had issues with lithium grease.
Yeah.
It polymerizes really bad.
Yeah. I had that problem on my 3D printer too. Bike chain oil.
I don't trust it because it has free graphite.
Oh, okay.
And it has the possibility of causing wear.
But there was one that we had that that didn't have any of that. It was just Teflon based.
Yeah. Well,
So.
then it's basically
Then it's basically
super lube.
Yeah. Yeah. So don't use your graphite. Graphite
A dry lubricant.
lubricants. Yeah. This is going to be a whole treatise.
It is.
Um,
We're all learning a lot about lubrication. And I get to spread my gospel of like actually understand how your spinning wheel works. Because if you understand how it works, it improves your spinning.
Yep. So.
Because sometimes it is your wheel.
Once you're done with your spinning today.
Yeah, in like half an hour.
Seriously, that's
No. I'm joking.
Go in and take a look at it. Give it some love. Find every little screw. See if
wherever there is movement of two different material, or not.
Wherever there's a connection.
Wherever there's a
of two
connection,
different parts.
and you have things rubbing up against each other. Because I've had instances where, like, when I first got my Shack Sidekick, the treadling was really difficult on it. And I tried everything. I thought, oh, it's awful. I oiled all the places that the manual said to oil because I knew that Shacks typically need a good amount of break-in with lubrication. And it was still giving me a problem. And then I had just watched a video on spinning wheel mechanics. And they talked about lubrication and how you should lubricate anywhere where your wheel, like, where it's moving. And so I put some oil on the footman, like where there's these stiff, like, rods that have, like, a cup that then goes to drive the drive wheel.
Like this thing?
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Like right there?
Yeah. And there's, like, a brass piece on the Sidekick. And I put some oil there. And then suddenly, my treadling was not a problem. And then there's also the issue with Shacks with the front maiden. There's a screw that tightens how the front maiden holds onto that front plastic bearing. And sometimes it comes from the factory with that a little bit tight, which I think has to do with the humidity in the wood. Because it's coming from Colorado to,
Not Colorado?
Not Colorado. And so sometimes it's too tight and it's holding onto that plastic bearing. And so that plastic bearing holds onto the flyer too tight. And there's too much friction there.
So the lube fixes that? Or
Lube and unscrewing so that it's tight enough to hold onto the bearing but not have the bearing fall out.
We were just telling everybody to tighten everything. Now.
Sometimes you need to address your screws too.
Okay.
We were talking about that too.
So
sometimes your screws need to be tight. Sometimes they need to loosen up.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. This is all very complicated.
Just do it right and don't do it wrong, and then you'll be fine. Yeah?
And then your wheel's going to change, and then you're going to have to change it. Like,
more often than not, the weird things happen from stuff loosening up. So definitely take a look at, all the connection points, squeaky positions. But if you don't want to do anything with a screwdriver or an Allen wrench or anything like that, at the very least, try to use some lube.
Allen wrenches, yeah. Key hardware for spinners.
Key hardware?
Yeah. Allen wrenches.
And
have a set of Allen wrenches and have, you don't need as much diversity in your Phillips screwdrivers. I really like the bike repair Allen wrenches you got, where it's all like on a ring so you don't lose them.
Yeah, those are fun. This is another one of those cases where you go and you find there's not really toolkits for spinning wheels, though that's why I was giving that look off to the side. I'm like, maybe we should sell toolkits for spinning wheels. But there are toolkits for bikes where you can get a nice compact variety set of various tightening devices, which would work really well for wheels.
Yeah.
Although I've found that most wheels, especially ones that you assemble, tend to come with all the right hardware that you need
The manufacturers are really good about shipping
And
appropriately.
they send good screwdrivers. Like,
Oh my gosh, the Allen wrenches that Magicraft sends are amazing. They have like handles on. They have like T-shaped handles.
I was going to
Grips
say
on them.
the Louette
Yeah.
screwdrivers
Yes.
that they send are my favorite screwdrivers that we have. Almost.
It's not like IKEA stuff. It's
Which we still have a collection of IKEA.
yeah,
stuff too,
but the spinning wheel tools that we've received by having
Yeah.
to build stuff ourselves.
All right.
See, it didn't take half an hour.
You sure? Yeah.
Yeah,
10 minutes.
and that second half was so much better than the first half.
You're welcome.
Thank you for not making me suffer for an entire another night.
So, your joke for tonight. Why don't pirates clean themselves before walking the plank? Because they wash up on shore. Little dark, sorry.
A little dark.
Just a little.
Well, thank you for that. That's a wonderful note to end up on.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for joining us. I hope we were entertaining and
much more educational this evening.
educational this evening. By the way, Amy says if you have a Lendrum, you'll need a Robertson screwdriver.
Never heard of a Robertson screwdriver.
Now I'm going to go look up what a Robertson screwdriver is. And hopefully you do too. Have a good night, and we'll see you tomorrow.